Good evening. Hello and a very warm welcome to my YouTube station, Smita Sharma, journalist. Tonight we are focusing on a foreign policy issue and a request right at the start. If you like the bilingual content that I've been putting out on the station, do consider subscribing to the channel and sharing it with your friends and family. There's no sensationalism or clickbaiting as far as this YouTube channel is concerned. Now, what we're going to talk about is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United Kingdom that begins on Wednesday, the 23rd of July. He's going to be in the UK first, and then from there head out to Maldives. As far as the UK is concerned, well, Prime Minister Modi has been to UK while he has been in office a couple of times, but it's going to be the first time since a new government has come in the UK with Starmer as its Prime Minister. And, it's, of course, one of those meetings that will be watched because also the two leaders who have met along the sidelines of the G20 summit last year in November and then the G7 summit this year, they will have a lot on their table as far as the bilateral deliberations are concerned and topics of interest are concerned. Now, remember, the India-UK relationship was actually elevated to a comprehensive strategic partnership in 2021. And they've had multiple telephonic conversations too, as far as Starmer and Mr. Modi are concerned. There are questions being asked as to why should Mr. Modi be heading to the US just as the parliament monsoon session begins? Because pre-2014, most of the overseas visits of prime ministers would happen essentially during parliament sessions if there was a multilateral visit. Could the bilateral visits not have waited? The politics aside, of course, these questions need to be asked. The opposition will ask, and people, have a right to ask these questions. But as far as this particular visit is concerned, why is this going to be of importance? Because the focus area, as far as this trip of Mr. Modi is concerned, will be the free trade agreement. Now, this free trade agreement is something that both the prime ministers had held a telephonic conversation on 6th of May earlier this year, and they had announced. Now, this is a free trade agreement that was being negotiated for the last 3 years. Of course, there have been different versions of trade agreements negotiated for decades over the past that India has done. It had some FTAs, which the Modi government came, and then some of these agreements were, cancelled out. And the new trade agreements are being put in place. So India has had one with Australia, one with the UAE, and now with the UK. This is a trade agreement that has been announced. But let's first, in fact, listen in to what the Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri today had to say as far as this FTA issue was concerned in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of External Affairs press conference earlier in the day.
The FTA with the UK, you are aware that there was a conversation on the 6th of May between the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister of the UK, where an announcement had been made that the two sides had concluded negotiations on a free trade agreement and other issues. Since then, the two sides have been in very close touch with each other. There is the obvious legal scrubbing, etc., that any such agreement needs to go through. We are continuing to work on those, and last-minute work on that is continuing. And let me just say at this stage that we will update you on the final details related to this at the appropriate time.
Okay, now let me just give you a sense of why the FTA is really important. Remember, the bilateral trade between India and UK, that has crossed $55 billion, or which is 42.6 billion pounds in 2024, which was last year. This was an increase of almost 10% compared to 2023. And the conclusion, of course, of the India-UK FTA by the prime ministers this year is being considered a very, very important milestone. As far as the cumulative FDI, the foreign direct investment from UK to India is concerned, now that stands at $36 billion, which is from 2000 till March of 2025, over a period of 25 years. While India's investment to the UK during the period has been close to $20 billion. Now, if this FTA is finally inked by both the prime ministers, what we are expecting is that the bilateral trade between the two countries will increase additionally by 25.5 billion euros every year. Remember, there are close to 1,000 Indian companies operating in the United Kingdom, which have a total turnover of around $91 billion, and they are employing over 1 lakh people. There are about 700 British companies in India with a turnover of around $59 billion. And the UK companies that are in India employ over 5 lakh people. Some of the key sectors are business, technology, research, education, and innovation. So there is a lot of business happening, but there are provisions for tariff reductions to almost 90% of the traded goods between the two countries. As far as this, the India-UK trade agreement is concerned, once that is inked and put into shape and it rolls out. Education is a very key area between the two countries. UK is among one of the top destinations favored by Indian students. And under the new education policy, UK has also become one of the first, in fact, countries, there's a British university, which is now set up, the Southampton University, which has opened up its campus in Gurugram on 16th of July 2025. So it's actually the first foreign university under the new education policy. Currently, you have around 170,000 Indian students who were studying in the UK as of the academic year of 2023 and 2024. And given all the tensions that have been playing out between India and US when it comes to the immigration crackdown by Donald Trump, also the turbulence in India-Canada relations, many of the students perhaps chose UK as well as a preferred destination, and that in fact keeps growing. Now, going back to the foreign trade agreement and to talk about the relationship as far as the defense part of it is concerned, that's also something where we are seeing the two countries cooperating increasingly. And, you have the armed forces of the two countries who have been exercising. In 2021, October, you had UK's Carrier Strike Group, which visited India, and it held the India-UK Trial Service exercise Konkan Shakti. You've also had the UK Carrier Strike Group, which will do a port call in Mumbai in October this year. There's a statement of intent indicating resolve of both sides to strengthen cooperation in electric propulsion. This is something that was signed again in November 2024. The Deputy Trade Commissioner for South Asia at the British High Commission, Anna Shotbolt, she was speaking at a conference in New Delhi, and she underlined that creative, and I'm quoting her here, that creative companies will also benefit through stronger copyright protection, and the services sector will see gains as well. The Double Taxation Avoidance Convention will also help workers on both sides, creating more transparency and, in fact, certainty, said the Deputy Trade Commissioner. So these are, of course, in the broader context of the free trade agreement itself. And one of the biggest, things that unite India and the United Kingdom, other than our history, a troubled past, we also have the diaspora, the population factor. You have UK, which has the largest diaspora, Indian diaspora, 1.8 million. So the Indian diaspora forms around 2.7% of the total population of UK. So it's not to say that India and UK do not have their fair share of differences. And there are key areas of differences too. When Prime Minister Modi goes into the United Kingdom, there will be a whole bunch of issues, whether it's free trade agreement, whether it's the defense exercise cooperation, whether what's happening in the Russia-Ukraine war, the secondary sanctions, the additional sanctions, oil capping that are being done by European Union. Of course, UK has divorced itself from European Union through Brexit, but a lot of their policies when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war, they remain similar. They will be on the talks table too. The issue of terrorism, Khalistani separatism, these are all important issues. And post-Operation Sindoor, while India has faced this criticism, the Modi government has faced this criticism that no country has really stood in support with India categorically. They did not support the idea of India hitting back at Pakistan. They were all calling for de-escalation, and they haven't really sort of spoken out against the resistance front. Just this week, we have seen the United States, the Treasury Department, the State Department, they have, in fact, recognized the Resistance Front as a terror organization. This is a group that had initially accepted responsibility for the brutal, heinous Pahalgam terrorist attack. India blames the Resistance Front for these attacks. Later on, TRF had retracted. India also tried getting it proscribed with the United Nations Security Council, but Pakistan was successful in getting that sort of, in making sure that that did not succeed with the help of its partners like China. So Vikram Misri, the Foreign Secretary, was asked whether India would raise this issue as far as the meeting between Mr. Modi and Starmer is concerned. And this is what he said. Let's listen in.
Are aware of recent developments also in that regard. The United States State Department has recently designated the TRF as a foreign terrorist organization and a specially designated global terrorist and a proxy of the Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba. I'm sure our UK colleagues are updated on this development, but this will give us the opportunity to share further views on issues such as cross-border terrorism and the need to respond in resolute fashion to such challenges.
Okay. I also spoke, in fact, to the former High Commissioner to the UK, Indian retired career diplomat Yash, who has also served in Sri Lanka in the past, asking him about what to expect as far as Prime Minister Modi's UK visit is concerned. What could be the outcomes once the FTA comes into shape and is rolled out, and the factor in ties, which is the Khalistani factor. Let's listen in to this conversation. To us, how significant is this FTA going to be bilaterally for India and UK?
I think as far as the significance of this FTA is concerned, it is important because, one, it's between the sixth largest economy in the world and the fifth largest economy, about to become the fourth largest. Two, given our long history, I think it is significant. It has more than just symbolic value, but also the fact that India has not been known to sign FTAs with a large number of countries, but in the last few years, we have concluded quite a few. And perhaps this is the most significant one with a developed country, a G7 country. We have FTAs with Australia and the UAE, but the UK is different. And I'll tell you why the UK is different, because the UK is not only, it's not among the top 10, for instance, trading partners of India, but it's a very valuable economic partner in terms of investments. India is the second largest, or Indian companies are the second largest investors into the UK. And also because London remains, notwithstanding Brexit, a very major global financial capital.
Right. But, of course, while you were there also, the talks were on. What were some of the major troubles that the two sides have had to get over to get to an understanding?
Well, that's a good question, Smita, because I remember it was, I think, in 2018, January 2018, when the then Commerce Ministers, Liam Fox from the UK and Mr. Suresh Prabhu from India met and decided that there should be a joint trade review. Now, the joint trade review was the first step towards an FTA because that identified products where both countries are interested. Now, this was way back in January 2018. The actual negotiations, of course, started much later. And I think the key sort of point, if I may say, was the virtual meeting between the two prime ministers, Shri Narendra Modi and Boris Johnson. If I recall, it was the 4th of May 2021, which really set the agenda. It basically identified areas where we could cooperate, the 4 pillars, the so-called 4 pillars, which are basically health and trade and investment, defense and security, and climate change and environment, clean energy. So these were the 4 pillars. And it was decided that there was a declaration that we would move towards an FTA. And in the last 3 years, our negotiators have actually really stepped up in terms of the pace. Um, I think the real stumbling blocks were basically because India is viewed as very protectionist by the West. Naturally, we are not a developed country. We have to protect our nascent industry and, more importantly, our agriculture and services sector. And India being such a large market, the West and developed economies view India differently. View India as a very large market for their goods and for their services. So I think to find a modus vivendi, a balance is not easy. And I think, though I haven't seen the full text of the agreement, but whatever is out in the public domain, it appears to be a very balanced agreement, or at least a draft agreement, if I could call it that. Of course, there are certain areas of concern, but we come to that later. I think more importantly, we have agreed, and this announcement was made in May this year, and I think I'm sure the apart from the legal scrubbing, there are others who are going to look at this with some magnifying glass and come up with their views. My views, initial views, from whatever is available in the public domain, is positive. It could certainly be a leitmotif or a model by which we can adopt in negotiations with other developed countries.
So, which are some of the sectors that you think really stand to sort of benefit out of this kind of an agreement? If you could explain a little bit in the layman's term for some of our young audiences.
So, you see, as far as India is concerned, the UK has agreed to lift tariffs on 99% of our tariff lines, which is very, very significant. There are certain sensitive areas for them, like milk, sugar, rice, pork, chicken, eggs, where they have actually they've not covered this under the agreement. So I think that is significant. As far as the UK is concerned, they benefit also because we have agreed to cover 85% of our tariff lines in terms of no tariffs for the UK exports over a period of 10 years. So it's a phased outcome as far as the UK is concerned. Of course, significant to them and to, I know, at least one former Prime Minister of the UK, the duty on alcohol or spirits is going to come down from 150% to 75%, and then to 40%.
The Scotch lovers have a reason to be happy.
Yes, Scotch whiskey, for that, I think for them they benefit. But more importantly, I think this is a comprehensive agreement. It just doesn't cover trade in goods, it covers trade in services, digital trade, and it includes new elements which India has shied away from in the past, labor, environment, etc. So I think we have been bold enough to sort of confident enough to move forward, and yet we have also seen that we will benefit, our exports will benefit. I expect that the UK would become India's important trading partner, certainly among the top 10 in the not too distant future.
And as you mentioned that, of course, it will be put through the magnifying glass. At a time when we also have that interim trade agreement negotiations on with the US, that mini deal has also not come through. Now looking at a deal happening in August, September. At this point in time, you said that there are some concerns perhaps too. Would you like to elaborate on some of the concerns that come to your mind?
You see, as far as products like, textiles, footwear, gems and jewelry, etc., our exporters are going to benefit. Where there is a bit of concern, and that has been, I think, commented upon by analysts, is government procurement. Now, India has a huge government procurement. It's been estimated variously, I think, 40,000 tenders annually, 38 billion pounds. So that is a very lucrative sort of sector as far as any foreign, especially a developed country, is concerned. So we need to, and I'm sure we have, but I haven't seen the fine print, build safeguards so that our manufacturers do not suffer. Because if you open it up to foreign companies, then in a way it's good. You get better technology, perhaps better products too. But you must also ensure that your suppliers, your manufacturers, are protected in some way or the other. It's a level playing field. So basically, what you need to ensure is a level playing field. People are worried that this could be the thin end of the wedge. So I think that is where the one area where I see a problem. Of course, this agreement, as far as I know, does not cover really investments. So we don't have BTI, for instance, as part of the agreement.
Right. For India, in these last 2 years, every time we have negotiated an FTA, one of the essential elements has now been the focus on migration and mobility. So with the UK, and also we are living in times when countries have increasingly turned either inwards, the protectionism in trade, the border stricter rules right now. There, how do you see movement happening?
See, obviously, any agreement is a compromise, really. And what we expected in Mode 4 in terms of freer movement has not been achieved completely. And it won't be also, because if you realize Brexit was because of this whole huge issue of immigration. And you cannot expect any government, even if it's a Labour government, to concede more than what the people there will accept. So I think what has happened is a balance for Indian professionals going on short-term work visas, perhaps even for Indian students going there. Things may not be that difficult. In fact, this agreement, I think, would facilitate movement, short-term, stay and work, special professionals. I'm talking about professionals here, because our problem is when we talk about blue collared workers, etc., it becomes a very wide field. And don't forget that there are a very large number of Indians living there in the UK, people of Indian origin, and some of them, and I don't want to hazard a guess, though I could, but I won't, of people who are staying there illegally. So I think this is an issue that needs to be addressed. The UK has been pressing us to address this issue, and I'm sure this is one way of trying to address it. I'm sure there'll be other ways. And once that issue is addressed, then, in my opinion, freer travel becomes of people, of professionals, of even tourists would become much easier.
Just a final comment, and before that, I would like to play out the remarks made by Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri in that press conference, where he did say that, of course, the issue of Khalistanis, that remains a constant in the relationship, just like whether it's with Canada or US. There, of course, there are legal processes too that have become thorns in ties. Let's just play out that comment briefly before we proceed.
In Pahalgam, you are aware issue of the presence of Khalistani extremists and bodies close to these people is again something that we have brought to the attention of our partners in the UK. We will continue to do so. This is a matter of concern not only to us, but it should be a matter of concern to our partners as well, because this impacts social cohesion and social order in these other countries as well. आपका जो सवाल था प्रिजन कंडीशंस को लेके, इसके बारे में बातचीत होती रही है और दोनों देशों के जो अंदरूनी मामलों के विभाग हैं, जो मंत्रालय हैं, हमारी तरफ से गृह मंत्रालय है, उनकी तरफ से जो विभाग है, उनके बीच में इन चीज़ों के ऊपर बातचीत चल रही है और आगे भी चलती रहेगी। और हमारी कोशिश ये रहेगी कि उनको दिखलाने के लिए कि ये सब चीज़ें जो हम उनसे, हमारी जो मांगे हैं, उनको पूरा किया जा सकता है और उनके जो कुछ विचार हैं उनको हम देख सकते हैं। ऐसी बात नहीं है कि भारत में लोग नहीं लाए गए हैं। आप जानते हैं रिसेंटली तहव्वुर राना को एक्स्ट्राडाइट किया गया था, उसमें भी ऐसी चीज़ें थी। ये काम हम कर सकते हैं, ये कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है।
Ministry making it very clear there that the Khalistani issue will be raised in talks. Of course, the India-UK relationship promoted to a comprehensive strategic partnerships in 2021. Do you sense any change when it comes to understanding India's concerns on the issue vis-a-vis that entire subject of freedom of speech and expression that most of these countries have been citing every time India has raised the issue of the pro-Khalistani sentiments being allowed to, act against Indian missions and Indian diplomats on their land?
So, Smita, there are two issues here, which are, I think, one, and they're not related, but there are issues where we expect far greater action by the United Kingdom. One is a crackdown on the Khalistanis. This problem has been there for many years, and successive governments, and I'm not blaming one party or the other, but successive governments in the UK have looked the other way. And to try and hide under the facade of free speech and free expression doesn't really work, because when you destroy property, whether it's, I recall when the Prime Minister had gone for the Chogam in 2018, in April 2018, there was an incident on Parliament Square where the Indian tricolour was desecrated, pulled down, etc. And I was told, when I lodged a very strong protest, I was told, but this is freedom of expression. We do not, it's not a crime in the UK. And I then asked them, but who put up those flags? Did it belong to the High Commission? Did it belong to a private entity? Or did it belong to the government of the United Kingdom? And if it belonged to the government of the United Kingdom, which it certainly did, then is desecration of public property a freedom of expression? And they had no answer, and they apologized. So I think we need to be tough on this score. We don't need to be on the back foot or defensive, because this is completely unacceptable. Attacks on missions. The year after I left, there was an attack on the High Commission on Independence Day. These acts of vandalism are completely unacceptable, and we do not expect only statements of regret or statements of concern. We expect action on the ground. And I'm not even remotely suggesting that you round up all people who are there, etc., and imprison them, but those who are responsible, those who create a law and order issue, those who destroy public property, must be dealt firmly under the laws of the land. That's as simple as that. That's all. The second issue, economic fugitives. That's some issue that I've been involved with earlier when I was there. It has become, people now, it's not just in India. I've interacted with people from Africa and other countries, especially those that were colonized by the British, that London has become a fugitive for economic or for offenders from these countries. And we have quite a few. And I think under one guise or the other, I recall something which might interest your viewers. I remember our Prime Minister raising this topic with his counterpart at that time, Theresa May. She expressed concerns about, the European Court of Human Rights and their courts, having concerns about human rights of these offenders. And what the Prime Minister said was brilliant. What he said was, these are the same jails where our freedom fighters, including the founding father of our country, was kept. And that was a jail built by you. And we have improved on those jails now. So what is this concern about human rights? Don't worry, we will look after them as we look after any prisoners, So I think, and there was no response to that. Obviously, so I think this is being used as an excuse to deny, extradition or to deny people being sent back to stand for justice to take its own course in India. So I think this is important. These two issues, I'm sure the Prime Minister will be raising when he is in London.
Well, thank you so much for laying out those concerns and what to look forward to when Prime Minister Modi meets Prime Minister Starmer in London. And of course, we will continue to track all the developments. For now, it's a thank you here from the team. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.